Hi, I'm Katie Caves, the Director of the Lab on Education Systems here at the Chair of Education Systems, and I get to share some good news with you today. We have a paper, one that I wrote along with Severin Bauman and Ursula Reynolds, that we published in 2021 in the Journal of Vocational Education and Training. The paper is called Getting There From Here, a literature review on vocational education and training reform implementation. And that paper was just named by the journal as one of its papers of the year. So I'm going to give you a quick summary and then we'll show you where you can find that paper if you're interested. So the paper is a literature review, like the title says. We looked at about 1,500 papers on vocational education and training reform implementation. So the problem is, it's not just about what's in the reform and what the content is, it's also about actually getting that reform to happen. So, and that's a whole different can of worms. That's a different thing. And it's really challenging to get reforms to actually get off the ground and happen in the real world. So we looked at every single paper we could find, and we coded almost 200 of them, looking for everything that they mentioned was either a success factor or a barrier to the reform or reforms that they were talking about. And we put all of that into what's called a determinant framework, which means, the things that matter for getting something done. And based on that, we're able to derive some lessons about what we know, like what matters, what are the important success factors and barriers, and also how is the field progressing and what have we learned over the past 30 or 40 years, because we went back to, I think, about the 1980s. So the first thing we did is we built a determinant framework, and we used the 5C framework, which is sometimes used in implementation research. And it has categories for content, context, commitment, capacity, and clients. And you're seeing a figure here where we show all of those and we show the determinants in those framework, in each of those categories. And the bold determinants, those are the ones that are important. Those are key success factors. Generally speaking, if you have those things, it's going to help your reform be implemented successfully. The ones that are in regular type are success factors. They're generally a good thing to have. We don't have any evidence that they're a bad thing, but there's also not tons of evidence that they're a really good thing. The key success factors, they come up again and again and again. They're really important. We're really seeing that they're really something that's driving the success of a lot of different reforms. The regular success factors, when they come up, they're positive, but we're not seeing them quite as much. The ones that are in italics need further research. So these are ones where maybe they don't come up as often, or most commonly when they come up, sometimes they come up as a barrier, sometimes they come up as a success factor. My favorite example of this is piloting. Piloting can be really, really valuable if we need to test if something is working, prove the concept, collect evidence, and then scale from there. But piloting is also very resource intensive. And depending on how the project is designed and if people are thinking far enough into the future and if they really are collecting the right data to evaluate if it's working, a pilot can be the only thing that ever happens. It feels like progress. We're piloting something. But in the wrong project, a pilot can actually stop forward momentum because it's like, okay, we did a thing. We're done. No more. So the biggest sort of success factors, the ones that come up again and again, in context, you have strategy and accountability. So what are you doing and how are you assessing if it's working? That was content. In context, we have coordination and context fit. Is there a mechanism for different actors to get together and work together? And does this make sense in the context? In commitment, we have political will and cooperation. So is there some belief that this is a good thing? And are the stakeholders actually willing to get together and cooperate? So coordination is, can they? Is there a mechanism? Cooperation is, will they? Under capacity, the three most important success factors are adequate personnel, adequate financial resources, and research or information. And under clients, and this one is a little bit special for vocational education specifically, we have employers, intermediaries, and educators. So it's not just that one of those is sufficient, we probably need all three. Another thing that we did with this research is we looked at how the field has developed over time. If we plot the frequency of each of these things, and then we look over the past 4 decades, has there been a trend? And in research in general, we would expect to see trends. We would expect to see that something that is important, there's accumulating evidence. It's getting bigger and bigger over time. Something that maybe we had a theory, we thought this was important, but it's not really, it's going down over time. We don't see that in this field. We see flat lines everywhere. And that's really important to understand because this field, it's dominated by case studies from what we call the gray literature, which is, it makes it sound illegitimate, but it's literature that's not necessarily peer reviewed or published in journals. Instead, it's published by organizations like the OECD, UNESCO, the World Bank, stuff like that, where they're reporting on projects they've done. So sometimes that can be not as focused on understanding why. It's more about reporting instead of like understanding and trying to build towards something and getting theory. But even within the peer-reviewed literature, there's just not a lot of movement towards any kind of consensus. So we're hoping that this literature review can help us derive the lessons that exist in the literature today and start moving towards something more like hypothesis testing. So in terms of next steps, like where is the index going from here, or where is this work going from here? We've operationalized it into an index. So we took the frequencies and everything that come up in the literature, and we put them together into a weighted index. And you can see that here. And it's the same basic picture, but you can see how important, how much of a success factor each individual item is based on how fat the slice of the pie is in that sort of outer pie chart. And we've done a little bit of validation work and it sort of makes sense. And we're hoping that we will be able to actually test whether there is a relationship between the implementation index, so the total quantity of success factors relative to barriers that a team has, and their ability to make progress on implementing BET reforms. So we're very excited to have received this recognition from the Journal of Vocational Education and Training, and we're looking forward to where the rest of this research will take us.